Let's start with my wish. Ashokji, you can start.
Avatar, Avatar, Meher Baba ki Jai. My wish. The lover has to keep the wish of the beloved. My wish for my lovers is as follows. 1. Do not shirk your responsibilities. 2. Attend faithfully to your worldly duties, but keep always at the back of your mind that all this is Baba's. 3. When you feel happy, think Baba wants me to be happy. When you suffer, think Baba wants me to suffer. 4. Be resigned to every situation and think honestly and sincerely. Baba has placed me in this situation. 5. With the understanding that Baba is in everyone, try to help and serve others. 6. I say with my divine authority, each and all, that whosoever takes my name at the time of breathing his last comes to me. So do not forget to remember me in your last moments. Unless you start remembering me from now on, it will be difficult to remember me when your end approaches. You should start practicing from now on. Even if you take my name only once every day, you will not forget to remember me in your dying moments. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Thank you, Karthik.
Thank you very much. I think we missed one weekend in between, and we are continuing after that. So we start from 158. So how are things? All well with everybody?
Yes. And Karthik, if I may add, this is the first session of the new financial year.
Yeah, for whatever it's worth.
Yes. I mean, just
Uh, the what do you call, the Hindu New Year is also coming up, right?
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Correct. Yeah, that's where we stopped. So this is the Hollywood trip. So is anybody in a position to start reading first? Shuk, you want to read for some time?
Okay, I'll start.
Sure, sure. Please go ahead. We start
Avatar
from
Meher,
at home among the stars. Yeah.
absolutely. At home among the stars. In Hollywood, Baba met hundreds of people in private interviews and 1,000 more at a public reception which was held at the Hollywood Knickerbocker Hotel. It was my privilege to stand at his right side and introduce the guests as they came down the receiving line to his position in the center. I say privilege advisedly because though few of the hundreds who passed before him that night seemed even dimly to apprehend anything of his spiritual magnitude, the act of speaking his name over and over again for an hour or more produced in me a great feeling of ecstasy. I felt as though I were somehow sharing in the Master's work of sowing divine seeds. Some of them, no doubt, fell on barren soil, but others must have taken root some day to blossom and bear fruit for the spiritual feeding of the world. Much of Baba's important work while in Hollywood was with the motion picture luminaries. He was laying his first cables in that sphere of life which, he assures us, will someday produce a wholly new type of motion picture. On all of his succeeding visits to the West, much of his time was given to this same kind of activity until he finally found those with whom he knew he could trust the motion picture phase of his work. One evening, while we were in Hollywood, we went with Baba to Pickfair, where a large dinner party had been in progress. Here, Baba, whose choice of abode is a tiny hut on a barren hillside in India, sat in the midst of Pickfair's luxurious appointments as though he had been born and bred in such an atmosphere. Amidst the tinsel stars, he shone like a resplendent planet, completely at ease, wholly unconcerned with the curious stares of the dinner guests. Seated against a background of flowers, this bright messenger, whose X-ray eyes penetrate the most skillfully conceived mask, poured forth his radiance upon his cross section of ultra modern and ultra complex humanity. On a couch opposite sat Cary Grant, receiving with utmost boredom the sincere homage of Baba's handsome young brother Adi. An interesting contrast between worldly sophistication and childlike simplicity, between ennui and joy. Tested and tried.
If I can pause you for a minute,
Yes,
just to bring out one point. If you notice her usage of words, she says, until he, no, there was something where she says, wholly new type of motion picture. So that's remarkable that she even says that. What do you think is being referred to here? Is it all the digital stuff we see? Is it the multiverse, the metaverse, the 3D, all of that? Or what is she even talking about here?
it's a new paradigm of spirituality, is what comes to my mind. It's something to moving away from duality to reality is what comes to my mind. But happy to hear this.
No, no, no. I'm saying specifically. Uh, I thought he was. So what is that line? Oh, laying his cable here. Okay,
It's,
look at
it's
this
the
line.
second
He
line.
was laying his first cables in that sphere of life, which he assures us will someday produce a wholly new type of motion picture. Now, I think, yeah, one is the analogy to maybe a spiritual reference as well. But I think even if you look at the lot of things that Baba has done, were indicative of what is to come. The very use of the slate.
Yeah, like touch
Uh,
screen.
yeah,
Touchscreen.
very use of
Yeah.
the slate. Exactly. The very use of the slate is that the use of virtual and the ability to, Baba, I mean, I think a lot of the push that has been given to technology was through him. And I think here I'm very pleased and surprised that Gene picks up that point and says that he's working on something which he assures us. So probably he has even mentioned it in to the Mandali those days. Someday produce a wholly new type of motion picture. So is it already here? Is it going to come? Is it technology or type of movie? We'll find out, right?
If Karthik, if I may add, it's happening like virtual reality and
Hmm.
generative AI. I mean, your technology. I mean, it's brilliant. Your insight into technology is really brilliant here. It's happening and it will continue.
Very correct. Very correct. Great. Let's continue.
Tested and tried. Before going to California, Baba had told us he would break his silence there in July, and this event would be the signal for the spiritual quickening which he had been predicting for so many years. We were naturally anticipating this moment keenly because we, as among those close to him, would share in his quickening in a very profound way. This Baba had told us at the time of his first visit, yet Malcolm and I had confessed to each other privately how utterly inadequate we felt to participate in such a momentous upheaval in consciousness. We knew how ill prepared we were to take our places as co workers with a living Christ. Of course, we also knew that in a twinkling of an eye, one could be changed completely. We were deeply aware that the spiritual basis of our lives needed to be greatly intensified before the eye might twinkle. I pause here, Karthik, because
Sure.
here again there is a mention or a reference to the grace of the perfect master plus the transformation. You can just go up, please.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a reference to the transformation, like uh, and they were anticipating that Baba would start to the verbal us even without speaking to the by keeping quiet, he revealed more to us. Is what comes to my mind. Uh,
Very true.
and I hope I didn't disturb the.
No, no, no. Please continue.
Uh, Nevertheless, Baba had definitely declared that he would speak in July and that humanity would experience a great expansion of consciousness. We gladly believed him, perhaps because we wanted to be relieved the necessity of further conscious growth, but we were not greatly surprised when he told us that there would be a slight postponement. He must first make a hurried trip to China, he told us, and would then return to break his silence in Hollywood Bowl, with Mary preferred to introduce him. How any of us have given credence to this fantastic story, I cannot now imagine. Certainly, it revealed what bathed in conscious we were then. Only too willing were to be lifted up to heaven by the bootstrap without further delay. One day in India, years later, Baba laughed as he recalled the picture to us. Fancy you're believing the story that I would break my silence over the radio in Hollywood Bowl. Aha. But believe it, then we did, and ardently anticipated his return from China. Before leaving with his Baba had instructed Malcolm and me to go to San Francisco and prepare the ground for his return. Through contacts which he had from our bookshop days, got in touch with various key people, arranged for us to speak about Baba and tell us and return and breaking of his silence. On precisely the evening when we were to attend the largest of these gatherings in Piedmont, word arrived from Baba that he was not returning to America but was proceeding to India and Europe. Nor would he break his silence at that time. This, frankly, was a very dark moment for us. Within a few hours, we were expected to tell few friends of Baba's return to America. Describe the quickening effects upon consciousness which his speaking and would initiate for mankind. To proclaim him as a supreme example of godhood, worthy of the deepest trust and faith, but in our hearts, dark doubts were refusing to be silenced. Did not know, we did not then know, of course, that for many years he had been predicting the breaking of his silence. and for as many years postponing it. We felt like trustful children who had been cruelly deceived. Either he did not have the God knowledge with which he had created him, or he was another of the impostors who posed as advanced spiritual teachers. Either he was deluded or deluding. The rational mind argued that for a few hours held sway. Anybody would want to add to this?
Yeah, I think that was a very tough phase for the lovers, right? So over and over again, both in all parts, even in Indian lovers also experience that test. So yeah, that's my comment, and I'm pleased the way she's so honest about it.
Is there a hidden meaning why he did not speak, or is there something underneath this whole story episode that he did not speak, although he promised he would speak?
I
See,
think.
Baba is
See,
not
I
very
thought of
clearly
yeah. Go ahead, sir.
stated, but yeah, a lot of other people. I mean, Dr. Barucha has his own view. Viraj's commentary has something. Bhav's commentary has something. What was it all about? Breaking of the silence. Viraj, this thing is uh, very simplistic and loving as his nature goes. Is that he has broken his silence in the hearts of his lovers. So his physical breaking of silence is less important. So he speaks to us through the voice, through our hearts. But it is just, you know, it's
No,
a
but so it's a
subject of
personal
great,
thing. So each one
intriguing
can
subject.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. No, but I think Ashok's question was also more, I think, was more to do with the fact that why did he say that he would and didn't, right? Multiple times. That again,
Absolutely.
I've thought about it. I've thought about it, and I think it's a way of deweeding those that are not completely uh, with conviction and surrenderance to
Yes.
Baba,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think
So
that's the threshold.
each round,
Yeah.
what was that?
Continue,
Go
continue,
ahead.
continue, continue. Yeah.
So each round that he did this announcement and the disappointment by not doing it, he lost a few, and that was the intention. Maybe that is the intention to
Correct.
see whether you still stand by or see that as a cheating and walk away, because many people really felt cheated because also let's remember that yeah, if you just think of those days where Baba was silent, you are completely committed to him, and then he months ahead gives a particular date and says, "This is the date I'm going to do it. Let's arrange a venue. Let's announce it to the press, so on and so forth." And then it doesn't happen. It's a huge impact on your personal ego because you have also told people about it, and then you're going to face ridicule from them, right? And obviously there was something that Baba was doing with all of that, is my feeling. Go ahead, Sanjay.
Correct. I have a similar view. Basically, he was creating a threshold to enter his realm, as we may say.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
he was not for the masses, and a
mm.
compliant or somebody who was giving away things in terms of physical, benefits or something. So his way was like this. That is even my interpretation. So many of those
Correct.
people who believed in him for gaining something or having even intellectual, this thing that he is the one, he will break his silence. See, yes, he has kept his promise and intellectual understand and satisfy themselves. Those people fell off. Yeah. Those who loved him
Correct.
with heart, yeah, remained with him. So
They felt it.
basically, plan was not to have any plan. And he has said this that I just create things to for a purpose and then destroy them.
Correct.
Sanjay, brilliant. And another thought comes to me that you see, Baba has said that don't come to me for anything material or which can be defined.
Yeah, other
Because
than
we
to
are
receive my love.
Yes.
Yeah, just to receive my love. That's
Yes,
what
yes.
it is.
No, that's. I mean, some of the things that what Baba says is outright unexpected and unique from a master, right? Don't
Yeah,
expect miracles from me. Don't
yeah.
expect material benefits from me.
Right,
Don't
right,
come to
right, right.
me if you want. I mean, so these are all very
Hmm.
unusual. But then that's the uniqueness because there's only one of a
Yeah,
kind
he basically
when it
broke that
comes to Baba.
typical framework.
Mold.
Yeah, he broke
Yes,
that typical
yes,
framework
yes.
of a master
Correct,
or a guru.
correct, correct, correct.
He was much above them. Yeah,
Yes,
Sai Baba.
yes, yes.
Okay, I'll continue from uh, now.
Now,
Now, in retrospect, it is difficult to recapture the agony of. Sorry, I lost the screen. Karthik, I cannot see the screen. Okay, I'll read again. Now, in retrospect,
yeah,
difficult to recapture the agony of soul I went through. But at that time, being a neophyte among Baba's lovers, I had not become accustomed to the sudden changes of plan when his inner work demanded it. Even today, after 15 years of close association, I would not attempt to explain why he does and says certain things. Once in Cannes, in discussing a letter which he had recently received, and in which the writer was bewailing the fact that Baba's promises were not materializing according to schedule, he indicated to me that everything he had promised would come true, but in own time and in my own way. I accept that though it explains nothing to the rational mind, however, the demands of the reasoning mind matter less and less as the years pass, whereas the intuitions of the heart matter more and more. But during those dark hours in San Francisco, the claims of reason were very strong. I felt myself insecure in a world where one's given word was so lightly regarded. Surely the word of a God man must be sacred. So I reasoned. But as the hours passed, I gained better perspective. I realized that though I could not understand his motive, I knew in my heart that nothing he did was ever prompted by the slightest shadow of self interest, and his consciousness so far transcended men made ethics or conduct that his words or action could not be judged by our conventional concepts of right or wrong. I recalled my mountaintop experience of illumined consciousness. The, the God which had spoken to me then had a totally different set of values from man's, some of them strange indeed to the rational mind. Yet I could not doubt the innate integrity of the infinite mind. In Baba, I had found the same quality of transcendental purity and wisdom. Finally, I realized that though I could not comprehend his methods, my heart loved him for what I knew essentially to be. Out of deference to our hostess and the plans she had made, we went to the party that night, but only the following day did we send out word of Baba's change of plans. Overnight, practically all of the newly made friends became ardent enemies. The next day, another cable arrived showing the inner contact which Baba had been maintaining with us. I knew you two would fail me. Love,
would
Baba.
not fail me.
Oh, I knew you would. Sorry, I knew you would not fail me. Love, Baba.
I knew you too. So she's talking.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, Baba is talking about Malcolm and Jean. I knew you two would not fail me. Love,
Oh,
Baba.
thanks for
So,
correcting me. Sorry,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. No, no problem. No problem.
like birds of the field, This unexpected change of plans placed us in an awkward position. The rebate on our return tickets to New York, I think it's New York,
Yes, you're right.
which was later sent to us by Quentin Todd, courier of our party, was delayed for many weeks. We had no income of our own and no close friends in California. Those former friends of Malcolm's with whom Baba had stayed in Hollywood had turned violently against us because of our association with a master who didn't keep his word. The baggage we had left with them, they forwarded to us with the message that they never wanted to see us again. This caused us more inconvenience than surprise or heartbreak. One of one or two evenings after Baba's departure, while we were in Hollywood, our host had manifested his spiritual asceticism concerning perfect masters in general by declaring that Jesus had failed sadly in his mission. First, by choosing such an unreliable band of disciples, and secondly, by permitting himself to be crucified. Quite evidently, he missed completely the significance of losing one's temporal life in order to save it for eternity. Apparently, of what obedience to God, even unto the death of the cross, means. Without his agony upon the cross, wherein would lie the redeeming moment of his resurrection. How but for sublime example as the cosmic way shower would we have the human blueprint whereby man can reach that same transcendent goal of union with the Father? Of course, to accept the value of the cross is to recognize the need and application of it in one's own life. To surrender all human ambitions, to admit one's spiritual poverty, to give up all self will is a large order for one who had set himself up as a teacher of the soul, which was our former friend's position at the time he had met the master. Baba's cable was followed by a letter in which he asked us to hold ourselves in readiness to go wherever he might direct us at a moment's notice. The prospect of being called, perhaps to join him, was certainly a most welcome one, but to find work with which would also leave us free to pick up and leave without notice was another matter. Also, this was the year 1932 when America was feeling the peak of the financial depression. Jobs were not lying about on street corners waiting to be picked up by strangers without reference or credentials. Had we known that it would be 2.5 years before we could see Baba again, and 4.5 years before the call would come to join him, we might have felt more free to map out a stable living program for ourselves. It is, however, just this not knowing in advance, this living from day to day, which constitute one of Baba's most effective techniques in training one in the life of the spirit. We soon discovered that we were not as standard as at first we thought. One or two of the new acquaintances proved to be real friends. One of these, Margaret Letson, in whose boarding house we had been billeted when we first arrived in Oakland, had become deeply interested in Baba. Though we told her nothing of our private difficulties, she sensed our need and offered to let us remain in her house rent free for the summer while her permanent boarders, school teachers, were away for their vacations. Her offer we gratefully accepted. Our eating during these days was infrequent and ultra natural. A couple of raw carrots apiece often constituted our dinner. Invariably, we did not have even these. Our friend would ask us to share her dinner. Toward the end of summer, when our refund on our tickets was paid us, we were able to reimburse her a little because by the time She too was under financial strain. In September
The the depression that's being talked about here is the Great Depression of the 1929
33,
30.
correct.
Yeah, 19, no, it's 1929 that stock market crashed, and it's called the trigger of the Great Depression. So this period is, however, 32.
Pardon?
No, no.
The
I think she
last
referred to financial depression in the last page. That reference is to the Great Depression of 1930, which continued for a few years till the economy bounced back in the US.
absolute.
Yeah.
In September, when the teachers returned to claim their room, another new friend came to our rescue by offering us the use of her beautiful ranch in the Santa Cruz Mountains. To help us with our food problem, she left a standing order with her grocer to supply us with whatever we needed. For a month, we reveled in the peace and beauty of our mountain
Offer.
home. Malcolm helped the caretaker clear away the brush while I kept the house in order. The weekends usually brought to us our benefactor and other house guests. But again, we had new quarters. Winter was approaching and the house would have to be closed. We tried to find employment as caretakers at some of the neighboring ranches, but on inquiry learned that they too would be closed for the winter months. Our walks about the countryside, on our walks about the countryside, we had come across an inn near our friend's ranch. So we offered our services to the proprietor of boarding for boarding and lodging. But she too needed no help in the cold months. She offered us, however, the use of one of our redwood cabins, which we gladly accepted. A few days later, we moved in with no other resources than the will to make the experience of a glad adventure. We had been told
Yeah,
by way,
you want to take a pause, we can rotate.
yeah, that's a good idea. I was just going to say that. Thank you.
Okay, okay, no problem. No problem. Any of the other two of you, Sunil or Sanjay, are in a position to read now?
Yeah, I can. Just give me a couple of seconds.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure,
So
sure.
I start from which line I was just
We
reading?
had the
We had
first line.
from the top. Okay.
Yeah.
We had been told by various neighbors that we were welcome to any of the fruits which lay on the ground, because none but hand-picked fruits, direct from the tree, it ever shipped to market, is ever shipped to market. So for the next 4 months, we literally lived on the fruits of the earth. Malcolm would start out in the morning with a gunny sack over his shoulder, and return at noon with apple, pears, and prunes, the latter encrusted with a quarter-inch of dirt, which required many washings to remove. Very symbolic, I used to think. Sometimes Malcolm would find nuts and luscious Magala grapes, which are occasionally made into juice. If it became wine, we did not disdain it. In the beginning, we were very content with our simple life. The days were brilliant with early autumn sunshine, and nights were velvety and still. From the veranda of our bungalow, we looked up through massive redwoods, fragrant eucalyptus, and colorful madron trees, which shed so joyously their barks to a, to a jeweled or moonlit sky, wondering if tomorrow which bring us the longed for message from Baba to join him at once. The red letter days were those in which the mailbox contained a letter with Indian stamp and postmark. Even though the hoped for summons did not come, we learn to understand better the ideals of St. Francis, whose followers in the early California days had perhaps traversed many of the footpaths we took, feeling in the hearts the same love of Christ, living the same life of faith in a divine providence.
Sanjay, allow me to interrupt. I think in the previous paragraph, that part is really nice. That remove the dirt, which was symbolic.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
So, so
the
basically,
prunes.
the prunes. Yeah, I mean,
right, right. Even this paragraph was literally very well written,
yeah,
actually,
absolutely.
in terms of
Brilliant.
English. Yeah,
Yeah, the last few pages have been
yeah, yeah,
very interesting. I mean, very flowery and beautiful language.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The Franciscan legend that had long ago endeared itself to us, but now we read and reread all that the Los Gatos Public Library would supply on this subject. Like the early Franciscans, we had agreed between ourselves to ask no one for anything, but to accept with thanksgiving whatever the good God provided. New life type of
I think
life.
the
Yeah.
yeah, I think that word is like, maybe like the early
Like,
Franciscans.
yeah, it should be
We
like.
had
Yeah, I want to say that. Yeah.
maybe, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe. And I think
Sometimes,
Francis, yeah,
yeah, you think, yeah, tell me.
I think these Francis, or however you pronounce this, Franciscans or Franciscans, I think are basically followers of Francis
Okay,
Xavier,
San
right?
Francis.
Saint
Yeah,
Francis.
San
That's what she's
Francis.
talking about.
Okay, okay,
And
that's the meaning. Okay,
and Los, yeah,
Franciscan.
Los Gatos is the location that she's there.
Yeah,
She's living in that ranch.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Los Gatos Public Library probably is the nearest one that services that area.
Mhm. Okay.
Yes.
Sometimes a friend would enclose a $5 bill in a letter. Then we would buy such luxuries as toilet paper, soap, and matches, with an occasional bag of potatoes. Our old standby, the reliable carrot and butter substitute. For we found that the exclusive diet of sweet fruits palled on us after a while, particularly since it consisted largely of prunes. What is prunes basically? I don't know.
I was curious too. Let's look it up.
Yeah, yeah. Prunes means, I think,
The sweet fruit. Okay,
sweet.
Is it?
it's sweet fruit. It's like berries, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, it
Okay.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. Correct. Correct. Correct.
okay,
Correct.
okay.
So it's eaten. I think it's like a plum, but then it's eaten mostly dry because I've seen prunes in along with dry fruits and nuts.
Both.
Rich
Yeah,
source of
both.
antioxidant. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Both
both, I
forms you can eat
suppose.
it maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Raw.
that's why she's having baked and mashed and food and
Yes, yes.
yeah.
We had mashed prunes, stewed prunes, baked prunes, raw prunes, too many prunes for one who would never have chosen them for her mono diet. Mono diet, huh? Until cold weather, until cold overtook us, and with it the rain, we managed very well in our primitive life. To be sure, poison oak attacked us virulently and somewhat disturbed our inner peace, but it made bathing an achievement worthy of a wow devil contract?
What will contract? What will is basically theater, which is very dramatic and mostly. Let's look it up. What will is too dramatic. It's like our what should I say, serials of TV, right? Lot of 1 second. A type of entertainment popular chiefly in the US in the early 20th century, featuring a mixture of specialty acts and burlesque comedy and song and dance.
Hmm.
So I think
Sitcoms,
the
basically.
Poison Oak, but very
Yeah.
low
It is
end
before
or
that.
cheap
Yeah.
and yeah, that kind of drama. And Poison Oak, I think, is a allergy that she is talking about. Yeah,
Hmm.
Poison Oak is a allergy. So if you see it here, so making bathing very difficult. So that's what she's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
To be sure, Poison Oak attacked us virulently and somewhat disturbed our inner peace, while it made bathing an achievement worthy of a vaudeville contract.
Okay,
Like
okay.
the
So
last
so
few
dramatic.
pages,
It
very,
was so
yeah,
dramatic.
so dramatic to just get a simple thing like a bath done.
Yeah. With the winter weather arrived various complications. Frozen pipes, a toilet long since grown, discouraged, chill blinds which almost drove us mad when we sat near our wood fire. But if we didn't, we almost froze to death. The cabin, which had been built by Japanese architects, was just about as artistic and impractical in winter as their own cardboard houses in Japan are reputed to be. Large gaps between the logs permitted both cold and rain to seep in, and when the rains descended in torrents, and our large, solid wooden front door had to be closed, we were in almost total darkness. The small casement windows up near the ceiling affording only the minimum of light.
1 second,
Then
I'll just
just
check what chilblains is. Chilblains. Chilblains looks again like a chilblains, a condition, yeah, swollen patches and blistering on the hands and feet. Exposure to damp air. That's cold but not freezing. Okay, so that with
children,
uh,
see this all these cheeks get those reddish in the northern India.
rash.
Even I used to have the
Hmm.
well, skin would become a bit harder and it will be like reddish. It will become because of cold. If you see pictures of people in Ladakh and Kashmir and all that, sometimes you see
Okay, okay,
uh,
okay, okay.
that I think is still blends. Yeah.
Chilblains. Okay.
Then just about this time, I became ill and lay for weeks in a cold, damp, dark room, which outside the deluge raged, while outside the deluge raged ceaselessly. Malcolm, who had been born and bred in a New York City apartment, always with servants and family to wait upon him, had now to prepare for food, clean the house, wash our clothes and linens by the awkward method of kneeling beside the bathtub and keep us supplied with firewood by the strenuous expedient of felling trees and cutting logs by hand. Because of this, his unfamiliarity with this type of work and his compulsions to be through, he worked
Be thorough.
to be thorough. Okay, sorry. He worked slowly and after did not get to bed until 1:30 or 2 in the morning. At 6, he was up again. Some of the bright spots of this particular period were the acts of kindness on the part of our neighbors. Apparently, they sensed our financial predicament, for occasionally a knock would come at our door, and there would be a visitor with a basket of food, a delicious barley broth for the sick lady, Waldorf salad, grape jelly, and hot biscuits. Never did food taste so good. I mean, it's so. What is there really to be a Baba lover? Really, I mean, this is what it is actually. That's such a high level of surrender to Baba.
Yes.
I mean, it's
And so full of life in
I
spite
am
of
nowhere. I mean, actually, Baba puts
yes.
roles into steam. It's like
Mm.
lovers get boiled like a sugarcane juice. Is boiled
Yes, yes.
like that. Amazing it is, but equally scary. That
Yes,
Baba will be
yes.
this kind of hopefully that period for us maybe already passed in the last lives. Hopefully, or maybe
Yes,
next
yes,
life, but not
yes.
this life. Yeah. Willing as we were to meet life on its own terms, I realized after a few months that our unbalanced diet was playing havoc with my health. I was therefore relieved when word came from Baba to move down to Hollywood, where Malcolm was to help Rustam, an Indian disciple who would shortly arrive there to make contacts with some of the motion picture people. How to fulfill Baba's order was our problem because we were still literally in a penniless condition. Some books of our stores in New York listed at $1,400, we now agreed to sell to a bookshop owner for 100. When her check arrived, we left at once for the south. Owing to my weakened condition, I was able to go only as far as Ujjayi, where I stayed for a month with friends. There, in the sunshine and healing peace of that beautiful valley, strength returned. Ujjayi is
So
very
this is
popular
Southern
with Baba
California.
world.
This is yeah, yeah. So that's
Everybody,
Meher Center, na?
yeah. No, that must have come much later, right? So
Correct, correct.
Baba's work
Absolutely.
already started. This is 32, as you're saying. Yeah.
This is 32. 32,
Ujjayi
she
has
was in
some
Ohio. Yeah.
spiritual significance, as if you are also referring some other masters centers are also there.
Yes, yes. All the centers, all the master
Yeah,
centers are there.
yeah. So it is a spiritually charged place, maybe.
Correct,
Before
correct.
going on to Bollywood, the idea came to me that I could make neckties with Malcolm might sell. This kind of business possesses the double advantage of requiring almost no capital to initiate, and it left us free to move about as Baba might direct. After finding two inexpensive rooms with a lovely view in the Hollywood Hills, we bought a few yards of material and I proceeded to make up 2 dozen ties. Filling this briefcase with, with them, Malcolm set out valiantly to canvass office buildings. This was another new experience for him. Selling books in his own distinguished bookshop was quite a different matter from peddling ties in office buildings. He was sawn at and, and abused, even threatened with arrest. On the first day, up to 5 o'clock, he had not sent maybe sold a single tie, though he had canvassed many of the office buildings and been thrown out of several. He stood on the corner of the Hollywood Boulevard and Vine Street and sent out a silent plea for help. He knew how the making of ties had taxed my small store of strength, and he could not bear to return that evening with none sold. Then he tried again, and at 6:30 he appeared home with $2 and a half, the price of five ties. Ashok, your camera is on, so maybe you can put them off by mistake. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
With a price of five ties. Such was the humble beginning of a business which a few years later supplied us with a yearly income fully adequate to all our needs. In those early weeks, when the experience of being sawn at and rejected from buildings was new, Malcolm remarked that only a perfect master could make the building business of selling neckties a spiritual exercise. For as he admitted, he knew of no better way to deflate the ego from the business of peddling than the business of peddling. That's so true, actually. These people selling you things on the streets, yeah, and I mean, you don't even look at them many times. Just
You give them anger, you give them abuse.
the
Yeah.
angers, yeah. I think minimum, at least I try to do is to politely tell them, we don't need, rather, shouting at them sometimes. I used to do earlier,
Yes,
maybe.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you and all that. Courtesy, yeah, that's right. I have related some of
Yes,
our
yes.
experience in, yeah, more or less detail to show how, after meeting a master like Baba, the forces of life contrive to temper and strengthen one in every conceivable way. Though our outer circumstances differed widely from those of the early Indian disciples, the same basic principles seem to have been at work. Our faith was tested and severely tried. Our ingenuity in the face of apparently overwhelming difficulties was given opportunity for expression. Resilience and fortitude were demanded. For us, again and again, disappointment has to be surmounted, particularly when some of our New York friends who had met Baba through us were called many times to join him and the English group in Europe. We did not begrudge them the joy of these visits. But to say that we did not earn to be with him too would be a vain pretense. Finally, when they all sailed for India without us, my heart almost broke. This longing to be with Baba can only be properly understood if one realizes the exquisite joy which his presence imparts. Tar Mere Baba ki jai. Beautiful. Loved it.
Beautiful. Great. Uh, so
Maybe.
let's rotate the reading. Maybe I'll read for a bit. Thank you, Sanjay ji. Italian holiday. When Baba left us in Hollywood in 1932, he stopped in Honolulu for 3 days, in China for 5, and touched India only en route to Europe again, where he arrived on July 28th for his third visit in less than a year. He was met at Marseilles by some of the English group. Later, they traveled with him to Santa Margherita, where under sunny Italian skies, they enjoyed a delightful holiday, bathing in the blue waters, lazing in the sun, and tramping through fragrant vineyards and forests. As always, Baba took advantage of the carefree holiday to achieve deep inner work with his Western disciples. These days in Italy with Baba were especially happy ones, As the group set out for their morning swim before breakfast, they would see Baba's white-clad figure watching them from the balcony upon which his room opened. Often at night, they would sit with him as they listened to records. Baba's favorites were Indian and Persian songs, the spiritual meaning of which he would explain to them. Spanish dance records and Paul Robeson's Negro spirituals he also loved. Sometimes on the terrace, they would act out charades or give dramatic entertainments to which Baba always responded with loving appreciation, particularly to the comedy situations. Thus, in innumerable ways, would Baba enter into their lives as playmate, friend, child, and father. Actually, he worked hard inwardly with them while playing outwardly. The tranquility of the holiday was interspersed with sudden conflicts of temperament, of jealousies, or other dark moods. Many lessons were quietly and unobtrusively taught. Many shadows were brought into the light of consciousness. I'll repeat the last two lines. The tranquility of the holiday was interspersed with sudden conflicts of temperament, of jealousies, or other dark moods. Many lessons were quietly and unobtrusively taught. Many shadows were brought into the light of consciousness. Then spiritual meeting at Assisi. On their second day of their visit to Italy, Baba said that he had important spiritual work to perform at Assisi. A special cave connected with St. Francis would have to be found, and there he would fast for 24 hours. One of the Englishmen, Herbert, was asked to make the arrangements. Baba instructed him to find a cave which had been used by the saint, but which was not accessible to tourists. This necessitated considerable searching on Herbert's part. He learned that the slope of Mount Subasio had been the most favored by St. Francis and his companions for their meditations. The famous Carceri or Carceri cave was, of course, now enclosed and converted into a shrine, but there were other caves off the beaten track of tourists in which Francis had no doubt meditated 700 years ago. In exploring the locality, Herbert found a ruined shelter, an overhanging cave of rock on the side of a stone wall. But the roof timbers and tiles had long ago fallen down. Above, the gnarled roots of a tree clung to the rock, but there was no protection from the rain. Tall trees growing at a lower level hid it from passers-by. It was dirty, full of broken tiles, damp rubbish, and leaves. Herbert had to excavate it, tear down branches to hide its entrance, and finally make a new path down the hillside so that no one could see Baba enter it. Baba had directed him to meditate in the selected cave for 4 hours each day, to fast partially, and on the day preceding Baba's arrival to meditate for 8 hours. He felt that the cave was far from ideal, but it was the best he could find. On August the 5th, before his departure by car for Assisi, Baba called the group to sit silently in the room with him. He was not due to leave until midnight. He lay down for an hour, not asleep, because his hands continually made signs and motions in the air, as he does when he is communicating with his spiritual agents who are invisible to the ordinary eye. There was a potent stillness in the room. Baba had said previously that before he could do his work at Assisi, one of two things would happen. Either there would be a storm, or he would be ill. He asked one of the group to draw nearer to him as signs of his being in great pain increased. His sudden illness was so severe that he was unable to start at the time arranged. 2 hours later, at 2:30 in the morning, the party started. During the long drive, Baba's pains increased, but at La Spezia, Quentin Todd became ill, and at Pisa, Kaka, an Indian disciple, was stricken. Apparently, Baba's illness was being shared by them. In the meantime, at Assisi, Herbert too was feeling ill and depressed. He stood at his hotel window, wondering and waiting. Finally, Baba arrived 3 hours late. After the party refreshed themselves with baths and food, Baba outlined their program. They motored part of the way up the hill to save time. Herbert then led them down by the hidden path to the cave, which they had reached at 7:30 in the evening. Baba had told them he would stay there during the entire fast and no one was to go near him or to look inside the cave. At all costs, the disciples were to keep intruders away. If Baba required anything to drink, he would signal them and they would place it just outside the entrance. Chanji and Herbert were to sit outside and guard the cave all night until 9 in the morning. Then Kaka and Quentin would relieve them. At 4:30 in the afternoon, Chanji and Herbert were to return, and at 5:30, when Baba's fast and retirement were concluded, they were all to eat together. Accordingly, at 8:40, Kaka and Quentin left the others and walked back to the hotel. Chanji and Herbert shivered in the cool of the night as they sat a short distance from the cave. Chanji related to how Eastern disciples had watched years before at the cave at Panchgani in India. Strange thoughts and questions passed through their minds. How little they really understood the nature and extent of Baba's work. His body was there in the cave a few feet away, but where was he? Sleep weighed heavily on their eyelids. Could they not keep watch for this little while? They wondered if St. Francis were sharing in this vigil. No doubt his meditations ages ago had prepared this holy spot. They were so sleepy, so cold. About midnight, they made a cup of tea on an alcohol stove and put it beside the cave in case Baba should want it. Gradually, light filtered through the trees. At 9 in the morning, they were relieved by the other two, and Chanji and Herbert walked back to the hotel to sleep. At 4:30 in the afternoon, they returned carrying food with them. Baba came out when they arrived, his work having been accomplished sooner than expected. At 5:30, they all had a very happy meal seated around a wooden plank on the ground. After the meal, Baba called them into the cave and explained some future plans. They felt awestruck by the atmosphere of solemnity in the cave. Baba, though happy that his work had been accomplished, was in great pain. The men had to support him during their descent from the mountain. With one on either side of him, they would run, all three together, down the steep path. It seemed as if the jolting and pressure against the earth helped to bring his consciousness back to his physical body. He looked somewhat dazed, as if he was suffering from a severe headache. Often he had to stop and rest. They passed by most of the places connected with the St. Francis legend. At the side of a road, Baba pointed to a huge rock where he said St. Francis had once sat and wept the whole night through for love of Christ. One of the daytime watchers recounts how they began their day in the village by attending Mass in the crypt of San Francisco. Afterwards, they shouldered their rucksacks and toiled up the hill toward the cave. The woods were alive with the birds, whose song was almost deafening, as though they were paying their tribute to the saint who loved them so dearly. At midday, as they sat near the cave, one of the men heard sounds coming from inside, and forgetting he was not to look, saw Baba through the leaves of the saplings, which protected the entrance, standing with his eyes shut, facing the sun, and making strange humming sounds. Among the many things which Baba told his men about this inner meeting in which they had taken part was that all the saints and masters from the sixth and seventh plane of consciousness had met with him that night and mapped out the spiritual destiny of the world for the next 2000 years. How such a thing is possible may be understood only if we recognize that the higher states of consciousness are not subject to the limitations of the physical body. The saint or master knows the created universe to be the illusory product of mind, and therefore dissolvable by mind. He also knows that the physical body is but one of man's bodies, the densest and most confining, though essential for the realization of God. Only in a physical body can we become aware of our union with God. This body is, however, unsuitable for the swift means of communication which saints and masters often require for their work. For their frequent inner meetings, they use either the mental or spiritual body and temporarily leave behind the physical body, as Baba did during our journey to Boston. There is a descriptive corroboration of these things in R.A. Nicholson's Mystics of Islam, in which he refers to a similar spiritual technique among the Mohammedan mystics, the Sufis. And he quotes from that book, and she quotes from that book. The saints form an invisible hierarchy on which the order of the world is thought to depend. Its supreme head is called the Kutub, hub, or pivot, or there's another word. Yeah, I think pivot, Kutub. He is the most eminent Sufi of his age and presides over the meetings regularly held by this august parliament, whose members are not hampered in their attendance by the inconvenient fictions of time and space, but come together from all parts of the earth in the twinkling of an eye, traversing seas and mountains as easily as common mortals step across a road. The Kutub becomes the center of the spiritual universe, so that every point and limit reached by individual human beings is equally distant from his station, whether they be near or far, since all stations revolve around him, and in relation to him, there is no difference between nearness and farness. To one who has gained this supreme position, knowledge, gnosis, and passing away, liberation, are as rivers of his ocean, whereby he replenishes whomsoever he will. He has the right to guide others to God and seeks permission to do so from none but himself. Interesting. A first-hand example of leaving. Yeah.
This is really enigmatic.
Yeah. So R.A. Nicholson is a famous author, right? He's not a Baba author, is he?
No, but
Anybody knows? Yeah.
It's a very old book, actually. I was just looking for it at Amazon. It is available, actually. It's
Okay.
660 rupees. Yeah.
Okay.
So it is the book being referred at as early as 1932 means it is a very, at least 100 years
Old book.
plus old book. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. A first-hand, I continue reading. A first-hand example of leaving the physical body at will by consciously projecting the subtle body into space is the experience which I had on the very night of Baba's meeting in the cave at Assisi. Some months after this red letter journey, I heard through a message from Chandji of Baba's meeting in the cave, and upon checking the date in my diary, found it coincided with my own initial excursion into space. Fully conscious, I shot out over the Pacific with the speed of light and then over the continents of Asia, and Europe, finally arriving at a hotel in Italy, though at the time I did not know outwardly of Baba's being there. My inner order was simply to go to the master. Passing through walls and ceilings, I went directly to the rooms which I somehow knew were his. Familiar pieces of Indian luggage lay about the room, but Baba was not there. Then, obeying another inner impulsion, I left the inn and traveled out through the ether to a beautiful countryside which instinctively I knew him to be. At this moment, I lost consciousness and fell into deep sleep. But on awakening in the morning, I recalled vividly the experience and felt the ecstasy of having been with Baba. Toward the end of August, Baba sailed with his Indian disciples for Egypt, where he spent 5 days visiting pyramids and the Coptic church at Cairo. The latter was of particular interest to him because of a cave which it contained, where he informed the group Joseph and Mary had stayed with the infant Jesus on their flight from Herod. They encountered difficulty with the custodian of the church, who at first refused to open the cave to them. But as this was the sole purpose of Baba's visit to Egypt, he persisted until he finally overcame the man's objections. During the winter of 1932 and 1933, Baba sent some of his Eastern and Western disciples to travel through Germany, Austria, Italy, and Hungary, while others were sent to China and America, Australia, and New Zealand. He was apparently laying new cables, new lines of spiritual force throughout the world. He himself sailed for his fourth visit to Europe on November 21st, 1932. Okay, anybody else wants to read? Ashish, you want to read for the last 15 minutes?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
message to India.
yeah. Passage to India. Shortly after embarking upon his work, he sent back to India the following message. It does not matter how much India suffers physically, so long as its spiritual power and value are sustained. Moreover, the result of its present suffering will be freedom and great happiness, because it is only after experiencing bondage and misery that the true value of freedom and happiness is really appreciated. Can you scroll down? However, to shorten this suffering, there must be love for friend and foe alike. There must be goodwill, patience, and forbearance toward all. Also, India should try to remedy its own defects instead of being concerned with the faults of others. The hatred between leading communities, their petty, yet disastrous quarrels must cease. Only then will the happiness and freedom of India be ensured. The whole world will soon realize that neither cults, creeds, dogmas, religious ceremonies, nor material prosperity and physical pleasure will ever bring to man the happiness he craves. Only selfless love and universal brotherhood can do that. Well-wind visit. Baba arrived in Venice for the second time on December 2nd, 1932, and after paying a flying visit to Milan and Paris, he reached London on December 6th. Here, as usual, he granted interviews to large numbers of people. On December 14th, he left for Switzerland with a few of the English group, and on the 17th, he sailed from Genoa for Egypt again, where he remained until January 3rd, 1933. On this fourth Western trip, he had stayed but 1 month, but much territory had been covered. Many new contacts had been made. On his way back to India, He stopped off at Ceylon for 18 days. While there, he retired to the seclusion of a room in the Buddhist temple for 24 hours. Baba's men had difficulty at first time the novice of the temple, who insisted that they could not enter. With Baba leading them, they descended, however, into a small courtyard which adjoined the temple. At this moment, a door opened and an old man who looked as though he were at least 100 came out. He apparently recognized Baba instantly and communicated with him by the strange sign language which Baba used with his spiritual agents. In a few minutes, the reluctant novice was ordered to show Baba to a room in the temple where he remained undisturbed for 24 hours. On the 6th of February 1933, he arrived at Nasik, India. The last week of March 1933, a group of 9 women, 3 of whom were from America, and one man boarded a liner at Geneva for India. Baba had given them the impression that they would remain with him for 6 months, but suddenly his plans changed, and after 3 weeks, they found themselves as their way back to Europe. Not for long, however, was this group to be separated from Baba. 2 months after their departure, he sailed again for Europe, where he arrived on June 24, 1933. A lovely villa at Portofino, Italy, had been leased by English group. Here, amidst surroundings of great earthly beauty, Baba resumed his subtle but effective work of stirring up and eliminating the egocentric tendencies of his Western disciples. One incident, particularly, is characteristics of how Baba uses the happenings of daily life to draw out latent qualities, both good and bad. Hazardous adventure. After tea one afternoon, 15 or 16 of the group went with Baba for a walk along the cliffs. He took them down a rather dangerous ravine to the sea. A number lagged behind, despite Baba's repeated admonition to keep together. Several fell out by the wayside, their shoes, their clothing, or their nerves proving inadequate to slide down a steep incline on the last descent to the sea. By the time they reached the sea washed shore, only 2 men and 2 girls had kept pace with Baba. Instead of returning the way they came, Baba elected to climb back another way. Nimble and light-footed as a deer, he made his way up the smooth rocky surface while behind the four tried to keep up with him. At particularly different places, Baba would stop to help the woman with his gentle but strong hands. By this time, they all sensed that the dangerous adventure might have symbolic significance, so they went forward with renewed confidence in Baba as their guide. But suddenly, they found themselves stuck. Above them was a sheer surface of rock and thin trees, while to their right was precipice was fell almost perpendicularly from a great height into the sea. They searched for the main path, which they had hoped to rejoin, not realizing that it was more than 150 feet above them. One of the men, Herbert, crept around corners, climbed up and stone cliffs, hung on to the roots of bushes, bushes, his heart pounding like piston. He half expected that a miracle would happen or what or that Baba would suddenly find a simple way out. 30 minutes or more passed as he tried futilely to find the main path. He spied a very steep cleft that seemed to have been used as a rubbish dump, but it proved very insecure footing for him, and 15 feet up it was blocked by a very large boulder, too smooth to provide either foothold or gripping for the hand. It was apparently the only possible way out. Baba, wiry and sure-footed, climbed ahead, scattering a little earth behind him. He clapped his hands as as a signal for them to follow, and then disappeared from view. Herbert followed, but got stranded on the smooth boulder for some anxious minutes, while the two women and the other man were waiting tensely below. Above was a very uh, gully, steep gully, perhaps 40 feet deep, filled with loose earth, rusty bits of metal, and broken glass. A foot would meant the descent on the woman below of stones, possibly a small avalanche rubbish. With a final wriggle, Herbert got past the boulder by hanging on to the roots of bushes. He could crouch on the loose earth, but could not move up the remaining 40 feet. Baba had completely disappeared. The youth who weighed but 100 pounds or less came next. With a slight hand grip from Herbert, he was safely past the boundary. Baba's last signal had been come up. Come up. Herbert called to Vivian to follow on, but she too foundered on the boulder, with her strength slowly ebbing away. The others shouted to Baba for help, but they received no evidence response. Had he left them in the lurch? Was it symbolic test, or had he relied on Herbert to see that the girls got through the difficult places safely? Herbert thought of all the heroic things he should but could not do. He himself was gradually slipping downwards. Any desperate move meant a torrent of earth in Vivian's face, just below him. She hung suspended there for 10 to 15 minutes, possibly longer. It seemed ages to her. Two fingers of her right hand clung to small hole in the rock. Her body rested against the boulder, and her left knee was wedged to the rock at the side. She was, no doubt, fortunate in having trained her body in poise and balance through years of ascetic dancing. The majority of the group had by this returned to the house. They were surprised that after 2 hours the others had not yet returned. Meanwhile, Baba, who had left the gully, was mounting still higher up the cliff and clapping his hands to attract attention. But being a mile or more from the house, no one there could near him. Tino, however, an Italian boy who worked on the estate, had met a priest, or so he seemed, who told him that someone was signaling for help. Tino then ran to Baba, who gave him signs to fetch a rope. He rushed back to the house kitchen. The three Indian men who were busy cooking the evening meal instantly left their pots and ran to Baba. A loosening of Vivian's hold would have meant a fall of 20 feet on top of Anita, and then roll or 300 feet down into the sea. Herbert could just touch Vivian's hand, but was unable to exercise sufficient force or to increase his reach to draw her up, since his right hand had to cling to a bush. Strange thoughts passed through his mind as he pretended to Vivian that he has sure help for coming. She was very plucky, but nearly exhausted and called every now and then, Baba, Baba. At length, shouts were heard from the top. Pendu, one of the Indians, appeared with long ropes and rescue party. Baba, quite evidently pleased at the scent of danger, came down to gully. Even he found it extremely difficult to keep his footing on the loose earth. Herbert bent down a long stemmed bush and held its root end firmly with his right hand, while Baba's right hand held the other end of the stem. The Herbert leaned down to pull Vivian's up over the boulder with his left hand. Pendu, who was very muscular and agile, took the rope down to Anita, who was still standing below. By means of the rope, they all climbed to safely, and their exciting adventure was over. Baba was as happy as schoolboy at the outcome of the afternoon crisis. To celebrate the safe ending to the adventure, Baba called the group together in the library, retold the story, retold the story for the benefit of those who had not participated in it, pointing out the dangers which had been successfully surmounted and evidencing his happy satisfaction in their safe return. He said that he had done important work through this experience, that the energies released, the feelings aroused, and the courage displayed had been utilized by him for his spiritual work. The Italian servants who were present, knowing well the danger that had been involved in the adventure, wept with joy that no mishap had occurred. In psychological terminology, his adventure suggests an important step taken in consciousness, perhaps by the four who participated in it, perhaps by four types or sections of humanity whom these men and women represented. With the help of the spiritual guide, they made their descent to the realm of the unconscious, the sea in safety, but their return journey to balance, integrated consciousness was fraught with hazards and danger spots. The guide being sure-footed and nimble, as the awakened higher consciousness always is, ascended quickly and easily to the safety of Mother Earth. The feminine principle of instinctive feeling and awareness. The others would doubtless have pursued had their spiritual intuition,
Perished.
the guide, perished, had their spiritual intuition, the guide, not come to their rescue.
The summary is beautiful, right? The description that she gives, basically. Yeah, so I think also we are out of time, so we can stop at this point for today. But the analogy is very, very interesting to the spiritual guide guiding people and the earth being the feminine principle. So very, very beautiful analogy. But though Baba said he was doing some other work as well, spiritually. So interesting. So, any thoughts before we wrap up for the day?
So that mention about the cave, uh, the the two caves. One is the in which San Francisco SSE was there, and the one in which Baba visited in Italy is very interesting.
Yeah,
Has
there's
anyone
one more cave that we heard of, which is the Coptic church in Cairo, which had a cave as well. Has anyone? Sorry, complete your question.
has anyone gone to these places from this group? Karthik?
Kama joined the call. We could have asked him. Kama went, na? Kama went to Assisi. I have not been to Assisi. Quite a few of the people from India among the Baba lovers have been to Assisi.
I'd love to know more about it, and someday is among the to-do list. I would like.
There is a Baba Zoom Assisi video. There is a book that a lady from the US has written on Francis of Assisi as seen through Baba, covering all the places as well, which are
Yes,
in and around Assisi. That's of importance to Baba. I think you attended that session, right?
I've attended that session. Please, if you can reshare that or the
I
meeting
don't
date.
know where the video is. I think you, yeah, yeah.
Yes, it is interesting.
Cool. Yeah, indeed. So on that note, let me stop recording then. Star Meher Baba ki jai.
Meher Baba ki jai.